Shadow of Destiny, known as Shadow of Memories almost everywhere else, is a weird game. If nothing else, it is a weird game. Made and published by Konami back in 2001 for the PlayStation 2 and later ported to the PSP in 2009, we're looking at the PlayStation 2 version today. To be honest, I have a hard time categorizing this game into any genre. It definitely fits the adventure genre in a way, and it definitely fits into movie genres like thrillers or murder mysteries as well. But when it comes to game genres, it's almost like a poor man's version of a Quantic Dreams game. But I wouldn't let that dissuade you. It's weird. I'm certainly not complaining that it is. I did rather enjoy it to some regard. But to be completely honest, I just find it odd this game got localized at all, especially considering it is fully voice acted. I didn't think there was much market for something of this nature back in the day, and it seems like the return on investment would be rather low. Granted, some of the voiceovers sound like this.
Life is so boring, isn't it? Anything I can do for you?
But the game is fully voiced nonetheless. But enough about that. Let's take a real look at this game and pick through its odd quirks and charms. In this game, we play as Ike. One day, while just minding his own business, Ike is murdered. But his death isn't permanent. Ike is revived by a mysterious disembodied voice. Upon awaking, the voice informs Ike that he is being given another chance at life.
What the? What's going on?
But although he managed to escape death once, death will find a way to keep coming for him until he finds his attacker and puts an end to it. To aid in his quest, the voice grants Ike the Digipad, a sort of tablet-like device that allows him to travel to set different periods in time. In a sort of Back to the Future style fashion, Ike must change the past in ways that will alter the future, but only enough to save his life while not causing anything else too drastic to change. One of the first examples of this involves an attempt on Ike's life, where he was stabbed to death in a park. To prevent his death here, he travels back to a few hours before the event took place. He goes around town telling everybody of a performance that's going to happen in the same town square where he was murdered. This way, Ike builds an audience of people to scare away the murderer and delay his death. Ike does have limitations to what he can do, however. He cannot deliberately cause paradoxes or make his presence too obvious, most of the time. For instance, Ike cannot approach the other versions of himself, otherwise the timeline, or rather his sanity, will collapse and bring about his permanent death. But then there's no problem with him traveling back in time and introducing new technology to underdeveloped villages. Shadow of Destiny is rather fast and loose with some of its rules and ideas, and it does end up unfortunately having a paradoxical and nonsensical timeline. But in times like this, it's best to take the Austin Powers advice.
I suggest you don't worry about this sort of thing and just enjoy yourself. That goes for you all, too. Yes.
In a way, this game also brings to mind the later released Murdered Soul Suspect, where another character is charged with investigating his own murder. Throughout the journey, Ike will travel to different incarnations and different time periods of this small Germanic town. Seeing this town in different ages is the real highlight of the journey for me. Through doing this, you meet entire family lines and see the steps they went through that led their descendants to meeting and marrying who they did, or how they came to own the properties and possessions that they do. You go back hundreds of years and actually get to see the town in its earliest forms. And it's really quite amazing how this tiny little universe and its history are shaped out. How it mostly logically creates the present time Ike belongs to. Shadow of Destiny employs a certain level of Twin Peaks-esque Lynchian weirdness, and I really appreciate that aspect of it. However, it's very hard to tell how much of this is actually intentional. Voice acting and animations are hokey in a sort of Lynchian way. but I believe this is purely due to budgetary constraints. That said, the hokey acting matches the hokey town and dialogue, so it is really tough to tell. In terms of gameplay, the gameplay is mostly just exploration. You go around town talking to people, collecting items, and inspecting various things, trying to make the right decisions in the right situations to progress just that little bit further, without something jumping out of the shadows and ending your life yet again. Most puzzles are solved by using the items in your inventory at opportune moments, though most puzzles do have multiple solutions that lead to a pretty crazy amount of branching paths for the time. These branching paths do tend to change a lot in the later chapters as well, with the game sporting multiple endings and variations on most of them. It can be hard to make the logical connections to the puzzle you're stuck on, but thankfully having multiple solutions does alleviate this a bit. But that does end up bringing out my arguably biggest complaint with Shadow of Destiny. Sometimes it just feels senseless and directionless. It's not a long game, clocking in at maybe 5 hours for a single playthrough, and although multiple playthroughs are more than encouraged, in fact feeling rather expected, it's hard to want to go through multiple times if you've spent a lot of your first run just messing about aimlessly. Overall, I enjoyed the game, but this lack of logical direction does cause the game to slip into lulls. And with such a short runtime, there shouldn't be room for lulls like this at all. Otherwise, the game is fine, and the parts that wouldn't normally seem fine actually end up accentuating the odd and intriguing tonality of Shadow of Destiny. Graphically, this isn't setting any new records. I played this on an emulator because no matter what I'd done, my capture card would not pick this game up. And if this one guy here is anything to go by, I'm willing to bet this is more the game's fault than my own. There are dozens of us who could just not get this to work with a capture card. I swear, dozens of us. If you happen to have seen some flicker here and there in the video, that's mostly the emulator at work and doesn't quite look like that on PlayStation 2. The sound effects are cheesy and the music is kinda trash, but kind of in a great way. Again, another pretty technically bad thing that just lends itself well to the tonality of the experience. Anyway, this is Shadow of Destiny, a weird horror-esque PS2 and PSP game. It doesn't really feel like many other games out there. Maybe a bit like Deadly Premonition, but even then, it's far off from that. If you own it and never played it, give it at least one playthrough. It doesn't take long, and at the very least, it's sure to occupy your mind space in an almost morbidly intriguing kind of way. Not the easiest recommendation given its unique nature, but one I think anybody can spend 4 to 5 hours going through and come out having not disliked their trip into this Lynchian oddity. And that's all I'm gonna say on Shadow of Memories, or rather, Shadow of Destiny. If you guys liked looking at this retro horror game, is it a horror? I don't really know. If you guys liked the video, let me know by hitting that like button and leaving me a comment in the comment box below. Links to socials are in the description, and as always, folks, thanks for watching.
Shut up! What do you mean, that thing? How could you say something like that? It's not as though I'm doing anything wrong.
I'm sorry, that didn't come out quite right, but...
You're the one who's being weird.